Good evening, I'm Andrea Anderson.
I'm Brian Allen. It has been a year since Brown County passed its moratorium on hazardous pipelines.
With that moratorium set to expire soon and the first permit application hearing of a carbon pipeline company approaching, lawmakers and landowners are working to protect private property rights.
Sarah Parkin with that story for us tonight from the Aberdeen newsroom.
Brown County's moratorium on hazardous pipelines expires tomorrow, and the commission has decided not to extend that moratorium, but potentially create a new one that would delay the construction of carbon pipelines until the Public Utilities Commission has made their decision. Some residents are concerned that letting the moratorium expire might send the wrong message about the county's stance on these pipelines.
The year is up tomorrow. This is the end of the moratorium. The Planning and Zoning Board has done their work and has established the 1,500-foot setback. So question might be, when is enough time? What would you look at next? What would Planning and Zoning look at next? So my concern is how PUC is going to look at it.
Today, the commission also approved a resolution calling on the state legislature and Governor Noem to reform eminent domain laws. State legislators from Brown County, like Representative Carl Perry, have helped file a petition calling for a special session. Their goal is to pass legislation that would prohibit carbon pipeline companies from utilizing eminent domain if the PUC does approve their permit applications. Now, they just need 2/3 of the state legislature to agree to meet in Pierre.
I do believe that there are enough people to get this going. However, if it doesn't work out, you as a landowner or you as a voter or you as a taxpayer, you will know who's standing with the landowners and who's not.
For landowners in opposition to the proposed pipeline projects, they're happy to see their elected representatives take action.
They are doing what is right for the people and what the people want. It is awesome to see something slowly kind of start to happen that way, and they're doing everything they can to rally more troops and to get this special session done.
The petition for a special session will remain open until 2/3 of lawmakers sign on, it is withdrawn, or until the 2024 legislative session begins. The Public Utilities Commission is set to review Summit Carbon Solutions permit application in September. In Aberdeen, Sarah Parkin, Dakota News Now.